So we will be starting. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining on this introductory webinar. My name is Paola Condemayta. I'm a project coordinator at Journalismfund Europe. We are happy that so many people are interested in this new project. And actually, that's also the main objective of this webinar, to share with you and to discuss what is the project about, also the media funding scheme, the theoretical definition of news deserts, the mentorship available, and also some practical examples of the main aim of this new project. So this session, as I said, is going to be recorded until the intervention of Samuel from Maldita. That's going to be the last intervention. And then we will not record the questions and answers section, okay? That will be only a privilege for those who are able to connect today. So that part will be only for the ones that are online at this point. So thank you everyone for registering for this session. So we will start right away, and I would like to introduce Yuklan. She's from the European Federation of Journalists. She's going to be explaining more about this new project that has different partners, different organization partners, and she's going to be explaining more about the main objectives of this project. So Yuklan, I give the floor to you.
Thank you, Paola, and good afternoon, everybody. And it's so nice to see all of you very interested in this project. My name is Yuklan Wong, and I'm working as the head of the project at the European Federation of Journalists. And at the EFJ, we represent National Journalist Union in all the EU and candidate countries. And I can see some of you are here also today. And as you know, for journalists, it's very important. Journalism is a public good that in nowadays facing a lot of challenges. And I know you working as a journalist or working in your media organization, doing a very important job, facing a lot of challenges, not only because of the digital transitions, but also the economic crisis, and also plus the COVID crisis. So that's why this is a very important issue that the EFJ have been pushing for. And also our member at the national level is pushing for to support local media, because it plays a very vital role for the community and also for the citizen to participate in the democratic processes. So that's why also the EFJ, together with the consortium, Journalismfund and International Media Support, IMS, and also a research institute, the Center for Media Pluralism and Media Freedom, CMPF, based in Florence, joined together to apply for this projects, Local Media for Democracy, and to support really struggling local, regional, and community media in the EU. And this project is funded by the European Commission. And as the partner, we have three key activities in these projects. One is to really research about the issue of so-called news desert, and also where these news deserts are, so that we could provide this financial support, which is carried out by the Journalismfund, this media funding scheme, which provides direct financial support to the media outlets who would require that to develop the outlet further, or even also help individual or freelance cooperatives. So it's not just for media outlets, but if you are a group of freelance journalists been working together for your local media, you are also qualified to apply for it. But Paola will talk more about the qualifications, the detailed criteria on this. And then finally is to really raise awareness about this issue and the importance of local media in your country, in all the EU countries and beyond, and to really stimulate more support from local government, from other actors to push for more support for local media. And that is really the overall objective of this project, because the funding from the European Commission may not last a long time. This is only a pilot project lasting for 18 months. So we do not know what will happen after that. So one of the hope is to really stimulate more supporters and raise more awareness on to support local and regional community media. And your success story, being able to apply for the funding and showing the success, will be very important to stimulate this lobbying and stimulate more future support on this. So I will just share with you more information on this link that you can see about this project. And I will not explain furthermore on this, because I think you are here to really listen to the details about how to apply for this, what kind of ideas you can put forward for your projects. So I will leave the room for Paola and the other speaker to explain more about the details and go deep into this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Yuklan. So, well, after this introduction, now I can say that this webinar, this introductory webinar, has been organized by Journalismfund Europe, but also in collaboration with IMS, International Media Support. They will be also presenting this afternoon. And now, as Yuklan said, I'm going to explain more about this new media funding scheme. So let me now share my screen with all of you. Well, I would like to first talk about Journalismfund Europe, just for the ones that perhaps knew our name before we were journalismfund.eu, but now we recently changed our name into this. I would like to first talk about Journalismfund Europe. It's a Belgian registered independent not-profit organization. We are located in Brussels, in the heart of Europe. Our staff is of 9 people, and basically our organization has been incorporated by citizens in 1998. And actually, as I said, we are 9 people working for this organization. And what we do is basically advancing independent cross-border investigative journalism by connecting donors and journalists in order to promote democracy on the European continent. The Local Media for Democracy grant is a media funding scheme that will inject 1.2 million euros of financial support to local, regional, and community media who are struggling to serve the public interest in places where access to information has significantly decreased. And who can apply for this grant program? As Yuklan said, legal entities, media outlets can apply for this new grant program. And one of the main requirements is that they have a registered seat in one of the EU 27 countries, or they can also be teams of journalists, freelancers, physical persons that have their legal residence in the EU 27. So the total available amount per call to be distributed among all the supported projects is of 600,000 euros, and we have 2 deadlines. The first deadline is approaching, it's going to be on the 25th of May, and the second deadline is in September, on the 28th of September. The eligible proposals entail to benefit the public, especially local citizens and communities whose interests are best served by quality, ethical, and pluralistic local media. So here you can read in detail about the assessment criteria. Basically, what the jury will look at is the feasibility of the project, if the project is sustainable, also the team structure and experience of the applicants. In case they are teams of journalists, of course, they will check how many collaborations that they had in the past, and it's not really a project that came out all of a sudden, but we know that there are teams of journalists that are already collaborating in these local media outlets, or at least in this kind of structure. So that's why we want to support these kind of teams. Also, it's important for us that the impact of the project for the local audience is very well explained in the application, in the proposal, and mainly in relation to the news desert area of the media outlet applying, of the legal entity applying. So that's also very important for us. But then you can also have a look deeply at our assessment criteria, and you can go point by point. And then what are the areas that we aim to cover with this technical support. Here you can see some examples, and today we will also have some examples from Maldita later on. But here you can see some areas that you can tick in your application: new methods for audience research and needs, analytics, data literacy, user experience, community engagement and growth, and so on. So here you have some examples. Of course, it could be that you don't have only one area that you would like to improve or to focus on. You can select 2, 3, according to the proposal that you have, the project that you have in mind, the solution that you are thinking to implement. Then we also have some eligible costs for funding, because of course the grant cannot really cover all the expenses of a media outlet, but what we can include is personnel and operating costs that meet the following cumulative conditions, mainly that all the expenses are directly attributable to the project. This also means that you can include some working time of your staff. If you have a media outlet structure, you can include some working time of your staff, and especially the staff that is going to be involved with the implementation of the project. You can also include, in case you want to perhaps hire a social media expert because you want to increase this audience engagement, you can also include this person as one expense. And of course, you have to provide invoices, the respective invoices to us in case you are granted. And that's something that you have to include in your financial report when you finish the project. Then also all the expenses or costs that are necessary for carrying out the project, they have to be, as I said, justified in your financial report. It's also important for us that these expenses that you are including in this project proposal are not funded by other donors or support programs. And basically also these costs, these personnel and operating costs need to be compliant with the applicable national law on taxes, labor, and social security. We also included here some costs that are not eligible under this new media funding scheme. So here, for example, you see some examples. We don't cover meal costs, food and beverage. We don't cover also recoverable VAT, and other examples that are explained here and also on our website. The jury members. These are previous jury members, so don't base yourself on these people. This is just an example of some people that have been jury members of other grant programs that we have had in the past, but we already chose our jury board, and they are 4 experienced European personalities that are known in the field of local journalism and media business, and they are also part of the academia. So it's a diverse jury board. They are anonymous and independent, and only once we finalize the project, finalize the grant program, we will reveal the names of the jury. They will meet after the application deadline, so that means that they will have the meeting after the 25th of May and also after the 28th of September, and that's when we have a meeting to discuss all the proposals that you will be sending. The deadlines, as I said, the first deadline is on the 25th of May and the second deadline on the 28th of September. I really encourage you to go for the first deadline, because in case you are not granted, you will receive some feedback from the jury, and with this feedback you can reapply in the second deadline that is in September. So here is just an example of the online application form. Recently, we implemented and we made available this option of translation, because we know that in many of the regions where we have these news deserts, you don't have perhaps the access to have knowledge of English, or perhaps people don't really use English, or they don't have the need of speaking this language. So that's why we made available the option that you can see the application for in other language, but you need to be aware that your application needs to be written in English. That's important for us, because that's the common language of the jury board. So that's why please you will have the option to translate some parts in the application form, or actually all the application form can be translated into your language, but you need to apply in English. This is mandatory. So please be aware of this and be careful to not send an application in other language than English, because the jury board is not going to be able to read your application, okay? Once you implement your project, of course, your project can be in your local language. We don't have any problem with that. Here, I would like also to explain you about how you have to apply. You need to create an account on our grant platform. There is the website, or you can also scan that QR code, and then you're gonna be directed to our website where you can create your username and password. And once you are in, you will see the application form for this grant program. And we have mainly 3 sections that are the most important: the application information. There you can see that you have 2 options. You have the option to apply as a legal entity or news outlet, or you have the option to apply as natural person or teams of journalists, as we call it. So if you are, of course, more than 2 people, you can still add the journalist in your team. But be careful that if you apply as a legal entity, we'd only accept 1 legal entity applying and not 2 legal entities. Only 1 per application is going to be accepted. And then the second part of the form is basically to talk about the project. You will see specific questions that we ask you about your project proposal. Then we have the budget. We share with you in that form a template of the budget, more or less how you have to structure your budget. And then the last part is basically just a confirmation that you are sharing this data with us and also with our organization partners, especially with our researchers led by CMPF, because they are going to be the ones also dealing with the information that we will get from this application platform. I would like also to offer some pre-application meetings that we have available. I already had 1 day full of pre-application meetings 2 weeks ago, and I was so happy that all the spots were booked. So thank you for that. And we have another pre-application session this Friday that is also fully booked. But that's why I open every single Friday to be pre-application days. So you can scan this QR code to book your pre-application session. It's an individual pre-application session. So that means that I can give you a better feedback about your ideas, or if you are wondering if you are eligible or not, you can also ask these kind of questions there. But if you want to save some time, you can also do it, like read the eligibility criteria beforehand, and then only go with the specific questions. And then there you have my information, my name, my email address, and if you have more questions that I can help, please don't hesitate to write me. So thank you for your attention. And now we will okay. So now we will move with the next speakers, who are Sofia from CMPF. So Sofia, I know you are there, so I give you the floor.
Thank you, and nice to meet you, everybody. I'm Sofia Verza. I'm a researcher from the Center for Media Pluralism and Media Freedom, based at the European University Institute in Florence. We are very happy to join this consortium as partners that will take care of the research task of this project. So basically, what we will be doing in the next months is to assess the situation for local and community media across Europe, and finally to identify which are the areas that could be defined as news deserts in the European Union. So to do a step back and start from the basis, for the sake of this research, we consider local and community media as those kind of media outlets that serve local or hyper-local communities, but also minorities or marginalized communities. What renders our research task a little bit difficult and challenging is that in the European countries, there is not a common definition of what is meant by local media or what is meant by community media. This of course makes it a little bit more challenging for us to understand what is the situation from a comparative point of view. In order to do that, we have built a roster of researchers that is based in each European member state. So there is a team of researchers for each of the 27 European countries that will take care of collecting quantitative and qualitative data on the situation for local and community media from different points of view. The market, the situation for the market sustainability and viability of local and community media, but also the situation for the working conditions of local journalists, the capacity of local and community media of being socially inclusive, so to actually engage and address certain local or minority communities and marginalized communities. So what is instead a common point, of course, for this kind of outlets, as it was said by Yuklan earlier, is of course the democratic role and the fact they are key for citizens to be informed about their communities, among other things, on politically relevant questions. And this is also why the fact they are community-based and place-based, let's say, also leads to the fact that usually the trust by their audiences is higher than the trust that audiences usually have towards some other kind of outlets. So this is key, and this is why all our researchers are really passionate actually in researching these kind of issues, especially in this particular historical moment, let's say, where the media market as well as other markets live times of crisis. Of course, we hopefully are just over the COVID crisis. We are in the middle still of the war in Ukraine that, of course, had also big repercussions on an economic scale. But the crisis for local and community media outlets is also due to more general trends in the media sector that have to do with the digital transition, for example. So the digital transition is both an opportunity and a threat at the same time for some outlets that used to be, for example, like local newspapers, more read in their, let's say, traditional format. So this has led, of course, to the closure of many newsrooms, to the coverage of news from local areas, especially by practicing desk journalism. So what we will do in the next months is exactly to assess what are the risks for local and community media in each of the 27 member states in the European Union. And to define an area as a news desert where we detect that these risks are particularly high. So usually news deserts are defined from the literature that comes from the United States as areas where local media are absent or where they are disappearing. What we would like to propose is to enlarge this definition to consider some dimensions that are particularly important to keep under consideration for the European context, which of course has a widely diverse historical background and also is composed of citizens that speak a great variety of different languages. So actually, the definition of a news desert that we would like to propose is like that of a geographical, but also of a political area or a social community where it is difficult or impossible to assess reliable and diverse information about local, regional, and community events or dynamics. So basically, an area where there are considerable risks for guaranteeing the right of citizens to receive plural and quality information on local issues. I'm gonna share here with you blog posts that we have recently written in order to put there for discussion our first ideas on how news desert will be defined for the scope of this research. The data collection by our country researchers is gonna start next week. It will last until the end of the summer, and we will publish a final report with the findings for each country in January 2024. In the meanwhile, however, the preliminary findings of our research will inform the evaluation of the jurors that will take under consideration your applications for grants. So also for these reasons, we would really much appreciate if you have suggestions in terms of reports or other sources that you deem important to take under consideration in relation to the situation for local and community media in your country. We'll be really happy to answer any feedback or question you might have on what I just discussed. And good luck with the application process.
Thank you, Sofia. Thank you so much for your contribution. And please, if you have any question, I say this to the participants, don't hesitate to write them in the chat. We will be following up the chat as well to, at the end of the interventions, we can also reply to your questions. So now we will move to Claire's presentation. So Clare, now the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. It's lovely to be with you today. So International Media Support is one of the biggest media development organisations in the Nordic area. We work in about 40 countries, typically in the MENA region, Africa, Asia, and Global Response Eastern Europe. It's something of a departure for us to come into working in media in Central Europe. But this is, of course, because our commitment to good journalism as an agent for positive change, and everything that's happening in the democratic backsliding is as much a problem in sort of Central and Western Europe as it is in the areas that we've typically worked. So that is testament to what is happening there. So International Media Support, you know, we are very committed with this project to working, very interested in countries like Estonia, Greece, Bulgaria, Finland, Poland, Czechoslovakia, in Hungary, of course, as well, where we've seen so much kind of media capture and political backsliding. Gulnara Akundova, who's our regional director for this area, is really strategically driven forward this project for that reason. So we are very committed, not just in the global south, but also to facilitate that exchange. There's a lot can be learned from many different organisations, which we really want to do. Thank you. If you can move on to the next slide, that would be great. And one more. What we've done, what I've been very, very lucky over the last sort of 15 years is to be in a position where I've really been able to chart the difference in the digital natives, in the pure players, the startups, local and community media. Because I've been working in this space now for 20 years. Chasing Sustainability on the Net was one of the first reports we ever did in this mapping. But the degree of mapping has really grown over the last sort of 10, 15 years. And what we see there is, a really broad range of local, regional community media, those servicing marginalised communities. And I would really urge any of you interested in this call to have a look at some of these databases. Of note, for example, Project Oasis is launching next week. That is a mapping of all 40 countries in the EU with all sorts of different digital natives. Great resource for you to look at and compare perhaps your offer in relation to others. West Media, for example, have done a great mapping of France, local information needs community, Switzerland, Belgium, lots of different projects. The Engaged Journalism Accelerator have done a fantastic database also of mapping these different entities. And if you click onto the next slide, what I think is really exciting here is that we can see from this mapping a whole range of successes, but also challenges. And some of the themes that at IMS here with the Business Viability Advisory team will be really interested in supporting you in this journey over the next kind of 18 months. A consistent message from these mappings is there is such a wide and diverse ecosystem in the long tail of journalism. Lots of different innovations taking up this space, not always hugely profitable, often relying on very small teams, real issues to do with engaging and continuing to support volunteers in the communities where they work, but then a really deep trust that hasn't always been seen previously with the clickbait model, which is hopefully going to really generate new successes in the future. There are obviously, though, other challenges, particularly with the rise of ChatGPT, GPT-4. We're seeing an increased problematic around content being kind of used. Copyright law, of course, very robust in terms of images and videos, but a lot weaker in terms of the actual kind of investigations and content. So we're very interested to sort of work against some of these challenges. We were aware of very poor returns in terms of Google Ads and other problems in terms of advertising returns. We've done a lot of work with native advertising and other offers, and as well with adjacencies. Are there other kind of business issues that you have to look at in order to support your journalism? So these are some of kind of the things that we see as the viability challenges from all of this mapping work that's gone on. If you can go on to the next slide, and then click again, it'll just start to roll. But what I've done here is just a montage really of some of the things that have inspired me. They're not all linked to the EU. They wouldn't all be eligible for this call, but I really just wanted to give you a flavour of some of the things that we see coming out and that some of the innovations that we'll be so excited to see from some of these applications. It's a little bit of inspiration, really, of the wide range of entities serving communities in new ways. There are a rich array of solutions, whether they are grassroots initiatives, innovative media projects around LGBTQ+ communities, ethnic minorities, conflict affected groups, minority language services, whether they're aimed at the rurally isolated. And it's often less about supporting an entire media operation, but particularly with this call, we're looking at, dare I say, a service or a project that can pinpoint a particular news desert or gap in provision that you might be identifying in your regions. So, of course, there's lots of use of the word innovation, and it's important to be clear on what we're starting to think of in this space. But technology innovations that you might be thinking about could potentially be about scaling production using artificial intelligence, for example. There's some great examples coming out from in Sweden from United Robots. They use structured data to really scale production around sports and real estate and meet the needs of public interest journalism that way. But then also Radar, for example, in the UK, that use large data sets and then create stories at scale for regional and local media, from birth rates to child obesity, rates of crime, and really scale the provision of local media through that. Others might rely on information community for development. So it could be around beacon technology or Wi-Fi networks and low-level Wi-Fi. So those are examples of technology innovations. Now, product innovations can be quite broad. We usually refer to the word product in terms of how news is serviced and delivered to news audiences. So Kraut Reporter in front of your screen here has done a lot of work around newsletter strategies, for example. There's the Basque Autonomous Communities Public Broadcast Service. They've done a lot of work with the Basque regional language to help on smart TVs and mobile devices. North Macedonia, you've got Vidabakar, who've done a lot of short, informative videos in an environmental niche. Or you might see different innovations in terms of processes. Process innovations might be around fact-checking, empowering your community to get involved in journalism in new ways, or engage them with long-form journalism. Position innovations really might be taking something you do already and then moving that onto a different platform. Great examples where that's been done with new products and services on YouTube aimed at particularly different audiences that might be there. And then lastly, kind of a couple of others, engaged journalism and engagement innovations, particularly out of the UK. I've seen a lot. The People's Newsroom, for example, launched last year by the Bureau Local, really passionate about getting families and young people involved. The BME community, for example, living in Wales. Or the Belonging Project, that's come out of Reach, which is, although that is one of the biggest corporate commercial publishers in the UK, it's a project really to expand ethnically diverse content for newsrooms. We've got the Bristol Cable in the UK doing a lot here, or even Solomon in Greece, who do a lot of work around migration issues. So a whole range of things being done to engage communities and innovate in that space. And last but not least, I draw a light on what we describe as open innovation. So maybe it's a new collaboration or a new set of media or journalists that want to work together. Notably, for example, in Lithuania, a young collective of journalists called NYLA, very innovative business model around Contribui and Steady, trying to get donations from their audience. So if you'd be so kind to click on, but really trying to inspire you about the art of the possible, really, with this call at what it could be. So briefly put, IMS's work package in this consortium is very much about offering technical support. What we're very keen to do is bring business viability support in a number of different ways. There's myself, who's on the team, 20 years experience in this space. Delighted to say that we've also got Irina Vladanova, who's joining us, formerly CEO of CityDog, a lot of experience in Bulgaria, Belarus and other CEE areas. We've got Emma Ligonard Boberg, who's also a gender advisor. And then on top of that, we will have additional consultants where we need it for additional support. If you could just click onto the next slide, that would be fantastic. So what, in terms of the technical support we can offer you, Paola showed you on the application form a number of different areas. How this would work is we're really anticipating having a process through this where you will have bespoke mentoring and coaching, which will start from an impact assessment, right through to potentially bi-monthly check-ins, so that we can really help you with your project management and support you through this process, right through to the impact and evaluation. But then also we would aim to cluster where possible from the grantees around different areas of support, because right now I don't quite know what projects are going to get selected. So we're going to have to do this in quite a flexible and an adaptive manner. But certainly the aim would be that within these areas that you see listed here, we would cluster different media who are potentially working on different areas. So if there are a couple of media who've really identified, for example, a newsletter as a great way to meet this news desert in their area, we will potentially cluster those together and work specifically around that. Similarly, if it's a technical innovation or a management challenge that you're having. So it's a combination of clustered, very specialist support, and then alongside that, almost like project management, soundboarding, mentoring and coaching that would go through that as well. So we'll work with you to identify the priorities that you have and to do that. If you could click on the next one, that would be great. So as I said, it's kind of a three-pronged attack really, baseline needs and assessment, as well as the reporting that's required for your project, including really drilling into the impacts, mentoring and coaching that will go alongside that by myself, by Irina, by Emma, and then other advisors that we will be able to bring in as is required. And then equally, we'll try and nurture wherever possible this knowledge exchange network amongst the grantees, and ultimately with a festival to showcase successes at the end. And as Yuklan said at the beginning, it's really important that we try and use this as a pilot so that we can show the impact of these projects moving forward. So I hope you agree, a really kind of great opportunity. On my final slide, just to say thank you and pass the word now to Samuel Allan, who's kindly agreed to join us from Maldita, because what I've tried to do there is sort of show really a broad range of things that are going on in this space. What I'd like Samuel to do now so kindly is to drill into some of the experience that they've had from Maldita around meeting the needs of underserved audiences. So I'll pass the word to you, Sam. Sorry about my technical at the beginning. Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Thank you very much. I'll just share my screen now. Can everyone see that?
Yes, we can see.
Yeah. Fantastic. Cool. Well, I'll get started. Well, yeah, thank you very much for having me here. It's great to be here with you and share some of our experiences engaging with news deserts, or particularly reaching underserved audiences and communities with our content. So I'm Sam. I'm from Maldita. I'm the project and impacts technician at the organization. And just to introduce a little bit about who we are. So we are a non-profit media outlet based in Spain that is focused on fighting disinformation through fact-checking, data journalism, and education. And our main mission is basically to provide citizens with the tools and information they need so that they can make more informed decisions. We have a quite broad audience at the national level. We've got over 2 million monthly website visitors and about 1.5 million followers across diverse different social media platforms, as you can see there. But with an issue like disinformation, which is our focus, it can often seem like a universal threat that affects us all, and it does affect us all, but it affects different people, different communities in different ways to differing extents. And as is the case with most media, but especially in our work, a one-size-fits-all approach just doesn't work. And so especially if we want to be able to reach those who are often underserved by mainstream media, and often, as is typically the case, those who are underserved by mainstream media are often the most vulnerable to disinformation and false and misleading content circulates online and in less sort of traditional and mainstream media environments. And so that's what brings us to increasingly over the last couple of years, we've been starting to explore ways that we can engage with underserved communities. And the main element of our approach has been based or stemmed from our community-centered approach to our work. So the community is a central part of everything we do. Basically, instead of simply asking our audiences and our community members to donate money, we also ask them instead to donate their what we call superpowers, and these are specific skills or capacities they might be able to contribute to us and to our work, so that they can be a more central part of everything that we do and thus improve the impact of our work. And so basically citizens are involved in all stages of our fact-checking process and journalistic workflow, be that in the detection stages. So when we're trying to detect disinformation, we have developed this WhatsApp chatbot, which allows citizens to send us disinformation tips of content that they think is maybe possibly false or misleading online. And then also in turn receive fact-based information direct to their phones from our journalists. And at present, we've got over 40,000 WhatsApp chatbot users with a 95% recurrent use rate. Then moving on from the detection stage, we also ask citizens to contribute their superpowers in the debunking stage. And so we've established a diverse community of over 3,000 verified experts who cover a range of topics from dermatology and nutrition to history, wildlife, and aerospace. And basically, with this database of experts, our journalists can call on them to act as expert sources in the content, in our debunking and our journalistic content that we produce. And by doing this, we are able to bring diversity to our sources. So rather than calling on the same expert over and over again, we're able to call on a much broader diversity. We're also able to promote representation. We've been recently developing a program to improve the presence of female expert voices in our expert community. And ultimately, we're able to strengthen the validity and relevance of our content, ensuring that it is relevant and valuable to a much wider group of information consumers. And then finally, there are our audiences and our communities involved in the dissemination and viralization of our content. We've got over 50,000 website subscribers, as well as the social media following that we have, and through their efforts to share and viralize our fact-based content, we're able to reach a much broader diversity of citizens, and particularly our engagement with slightly less conventional, non-traditional channels like WhatsApp. We're also able to engage and reach those who don't tend to rely on traditional platforms and outlets for their information consumption. But how does this relate specifically to news deserts or underserved communities? Because we're still at a kind of one-size-fits-all approach, okay? Well, from here, we've started developing ideas as to how maybe we could tailor this community model to fit or to reach slightly more specific communities. So for instance, this is an idea that's not something we've actually put into practice yet, but something that we've been working on. We're hopefully going to get the funding for later this year. The idea of developing a migrant superpower community. Migrant communities across Europe, as many I'm sure you're aware, are key victims of disinformation and hate speech. They're widely misrepresented or underrepresented in mainstream media, and they're generally, as a result, very poorly served by mainstream media outlets. And their voices are rarely present in the sources beyond their identities, as very reductive identities as migrants and refugees. So what we thought about doing was engaging with media outlets and migrant communities and organizations across Europe to expand our superpower model, okay, to engage citizens in, to engage migrants in, to donate their experts, so experts with a migration background, to share their knowledge so that it can be better valued and represented in the mainstream media. And in order to do this, we've been making, the key element has been making connections between media outlets, between migrant communities and organizations, and identifying those key gatekeepers, okay? We as a media organization with no specific focus in migration need to be able to engage with migrant communities so that they can then form a part of the work that we do. And it's therefore finding those key organizations and what we call gatekeepers to introduce us to those broader communities and to encourage their engagement and participation, okay? Moving on to another example, okay? This is a project that we have input. implemented, and this is engaging with media literacy. And media literacy and our work in trying to promote media literacy has been a key area in which we've been able to more effectively engage with news deserts and with underserved audiences. Okay, one instance here would be working with the Roma community here in Spain. But across Europe in general, they're a severely marginalized community, very rarely considered in mainstream media, and hugely underserved both by media, but also particularly media literacy and educational efforts as well. So what we set out to do was we found our gatekeeper, which was collaboration with the Roma Secretariat Foundation here in Spain, who operated at a national level, but we focused on the community here in Madrid. And we worked with them, bringing our expertise with media literacy to develop e-learning modules for their online education platform. Okay, so this was content and material that was specifically designed for and by the Roma community in Spain. It was aimed at young children with low digital literacy skills and tailored for their use in classroom environments. And the modules were then incorporated onto the platform, the educational platform that the Secretariat has. So then it was severely amplified within that community. So not on a sort of general media outlet platform, but on a specific platform that already serves that community. And within the modules, we developed engaging audiovisual content and complementary educational activities, including supporting materials for teachers. And it was co-designed with members of the Roma community. So as you can see in the image here, we developed some short videos, and the people starring in the videos were members from the Roma community, and the examples that were used were relevant and basically drawn from cases provided by members of the community as well, to ensure the relevance of it and to show the value of it to the community, rather than just presuming that it was going to be relevant and valuable at a general level. And ultimately, what we managed to achieve was the creation of quality and accessible media literacy tools that were, as I say, of value and relevance to the needs of the Roma community in Madrid. It was introduced in a number of schools in Madrid to serve pupils working who were struggling in classrooms. But it also was then the platform that it was implemented on was at a national level. So then we were able to reach this underserved community at a much larger scale as well. And just to move on to a final example, again, in the field of media literacy, okay? Sometimes you have to experiment with your approach, and sometimes digital approaches often don't work. So sometimes you have to get on the road. And that's what this literally we set off, some of our staff set off a couple of days ago in our project called the Bulo Bus, which basically is a bus of some journalists and media literacy experts, which is going to do a tour of 20 rural towns in Spain over the next 2 months, delivering media literacy content to communities and individuals there, with a particular focus on the elderly community, as they are particularly vulnerable to disinformation, and rural areas in Spain, as they are in much of Europe, are increasingly aging communities as well. And basically, as we go around the country, we're innovating with a variety of different formats. So we're going to set up in the town hall, the town square, and have like a help desk where people can come and get extra information. As you can see, we've got flyers there with clear details on how you can improve your abilities to identify a scam or a hoax or something like that. We've also developed a short theatre performance, which is being performed in theatres in these small towns across the country, as another medium through which we can engage citizens who don't necessarily engage with media through traditional formats. As well as a number of different various educational activities in different communities. We're also going into some schools to provide them with courses, and some local cultural and education centres as well, to reach as many people as possible, but bringing the content and materials to them, okay, in offline formats as much as online formats, so that we can reach as many people as possible that don't generally tend to be considered in these media literacy efforts. Okay, so that's just a few examples there. Broad diversity, feel free to ask me more questions about them. Just to sort of close with a couple of sort of tips from our experience. my best piece of advice when developing these sort of these projects would be to start with you. Start with your expertise and start with your community. Okay, what do you already have? What do you already know? And what can you already offer that will help you to reach underserved communities? It sounds a little bit sort of obvious, but it's quite easy to be like, okay, we need to do something completely different that we don't know anything about. But no, develop what you already know. For instance, develop on a community model that you already have. How can that be tailored to a certain context? What context do you have? Are you in touch with a good network of gatekeepers? Or do you have a network of people that can help you amplify the content you have? Or do you have a specific specialism that could be of particular value, say media literacy or something in a specific context? And how could this be mobilized in an interesting way? And then from there, you of course do have to get creative a little bit. Particularly, I would suggest through your medium. What kind of mediums can you draw on? And this also comes to actually knowing the community that you want to engage with. So social media, short engaging social media videos are not going to reach the little old lady in the Spanish rural town. So it's modifying your approach to make sure you get there. And this is always resource limited, I agree, but don't be afraid to get adventurous. And of course, as I think is probably quite obvious, make sure you tailor your approach, tailor it to what you're doing, and tailor it to the audience that you are trying to serve. That was a little bit of a rush. I rushed through that, but I hope that provided some interesting inspiration for you guys, and good luck with developing your projects. And I'm here if you have any questions. I'll leave my email in the chat as well if you want to send any other follow-ups by email as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you, Samuel, and thank you to all our speakers today. So we will be closing the interventions part. So thank you to all those that are watching us via Facebook. We will close the session for those ones on Facebook here. So thank you for joining. And now we will have the moment for questions and answers. But let me first say goodbye to the ones that are watching us on Facebook. Thank you for joining, and okay. See you next time, and please subscribe to our newsletter as well of Journalismfund, when you will have more news about these kind of webinars, and of course more information about the Local Media for Democracy grant program. Thank you to those ones that are on Facebook. Okay, so I will also stop the recording. Thank you to the ones that are watching us on YouTube as well. So thank you for following up this webinar, and we hope that you can stay tuned for more news about this new grant program. Thank you.